Israel continued its limited military operation in Rafah today, conducting targeted raids in the area. The Israeli Air Force also struck more than 100 terror targets up and down the Gaza Strip, including military stations and Hamas launching areas for rockets. Now, in a Senate hearing today, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin admitted the Biden administration, quote unquote, paused the delivery of additional bombs to Israel as it assesses the Rafah situation. Well, as the strains between the Biden administration and Israel become more apparent, we have to ask the question, what will this mean long-term for U.S.-Israeli relations, and how might this affect Israel's ongoing war against Hamas? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Senator Katie Britt from Alabama. She serves on the Senate Committee on Appropriations. Senator Britt, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony. I really appreciate it.
So, Senator, you took a trip to Israel shortly after October the 7th. You saw and assessed the situation on the ground. The situation has only intensified with Iran attacking Israel, Israel having to expend over $500,000 in munitions to defend itself against Iran. The Biden administration, even after Congress approving additional funding for Israel, has been slow walking and, in this case, blocking munitions to Israel. What can you tell us?
Yeah, it's completely and totally unacceptable. Right now, Israel is fighting for her life. It is imperative, I believe, both as Americans and for me as a Christian, that we stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. When you look at what this administration has done, they continue to undermine Israel's efforts in both being able to get the hostages home, of which we cannot forget there are 5 American hostages outstanding in this group, and additionally, eradicate Hamas. Hamas has said they would come back again and again and again until they absolutely annihilate the Jewish people. And this is a moment that unfortunately is going to stay with President Biden forever, and that he is turning his back on our greatest ally in the Middle East, and unfortunately it may have dire consequences. So we've got to continue to speak up and speak directly to this and make sure that Israel has what she needs to defend herself and to continue to thrive.
Senator, are you concerned that this could have long-term implications for the relationship between the United States and Israel, which has been a longtime ally?
Well, Tony, what I will say is you saw an overwhelming voice coming from Congress saying, we support Israel. We stand with Israel. So this is the Biden administration. This lands solely on Joe Biden. He is giving in to the pro-Hamas wing of his party. He is looking forward to an election and thinking more about what's happening in Michigan and Minnesota than he is about actually creating a peaceful world and projecting peace through strength and what that means from the White House. He has a continual doctrine of appeasement. You mentioned it when you were talking about Iran, but we can even look at the sanctions under President Trump and that regime. You look there and you look and what happened with the Iranian regime there versus what we're seeing under Joe Biden. The very same tools in the toolbox, but yet Iran continues to flourish from profits and oil revenue because this administration refuses to use the tools in their toolbox to dry them up financially. And we know what they do with that money, Tony. They fund terrorism. They fund Hamas. They fund Hezbollah. They fund the Houthis. You mentioned it about attacking our troops almost 200 times since October 7th. And when I visited Israel about 2 weeks after October 7th and landed there, it was an eerie feeling, and that it was quiet and the streets were empty. And as we talked to those people on the ground and people in the Israeli government, they reminded us that Israel was created after the Holocaust so the Jewish people would never have to hide again. And now today is 79 years since VE Day, when we actually liberated Europe from the grip of Nazi terror. And just on Monday was National Holocaust Remembrance Day, where we remember the 6 million Jews who lost their life during the Holocaust. And it comes at a time, and listening to your entire programming, it comes at a time where we just have recent polls that say between the ages of 18 and 29 that 1 in 5 individuals in that age group believes the Holocaust did not occur. So this rise of anti-Semitism, the not standing with Israel, I think there are those of us in Congress that are going to continue to speak up, speak loudly, and use every tool in our toolbox to force this administration to do the right thing. And the right thing is to standing with Israel, allowing them to actually eradicate Hamas. That's what's best for the people of Israel and the people of Palestine, and find a path forward from there.
Senator, I think you're correct. Congress has spoken very loudly. We have an invitation coming from Congress to speak to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to speak to a joint session of Congress. And then I just saw just a few moments ago that both House Speaker Mike Johnson and the Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell have issued a joint statement calling upon the administration to release those munitions to Israel. I want to ask you this question, Senator Britt. Do you think, which is the Biden administration messaging to? Is this a message to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, or is this a message for the left's radical base here in the United States?
I think it's the left radical base. I mean, honestly, if you think about this, let's talk about this. Chuck Schumer, the leader of the Democrats here in the Senate, went down to the Senate floor several weeks ago, and he called for a regime change there in Israel, obviously placating to his base. Now, if he was really worried about regime changes and wanted something that would actually create peace there in the Middle East, he would talk about a regime change in Iran, or he would talk about a regime change in other places. He would not focus that there on Israel. I mean, we could talk about a regime change in China or one in Russia. I mean, the list, North Korea, goes on and on and on. But yet he chose to go down and speak directly about the only democracy there in the Middle East. They are worried about voters. They see that President Trump is consistently rising in the polls. I mean, there is no doubt that he was the most pro-Israel president that we have ever had. And they are placating to a far left base. And the problem is when you're seeing what's happening across our country on our quote unquote elite institution campuses, and this administration refusing to unequivocally call it out. I mean, we should be able to call evil, evil in this nation. And unfortunately, this president doesn't even have the gumption to do that. He needs to be making sure that we are enforcing Title VI, where our Jewish brothers and sisters feel safe going to class, feel safe in their living environment, feel safe studying in the library. Instead, he's allowing signs that say, kill the Jews, go back to Poland. We are Hamas. Make no mistake, Hamas is a terrorist organization. And I also believe that anyone is here on a student visa that is advocating for this type of terrorism and is advocating for the genocide of the Jewish people needs to go home. And these institutions should not be federally funded, and allowing this type of activity to occur. There is one thing is free speech. There is another thing that is action, and action calling for the Jewish people to be put in harm's way is completely and totally unacceptable. And I will continue to speak out about that.
As you should. It is unacceptable. Very quickly, Senator Britt, switching topics, you've taken a very strong pro-life stand during your time in the Senate, and you've introduced a new initiative, More Opportunities for Moms to Succeed. Tell us very quickly about that.
Yeah, Tony. So I am so proud to be pro-life. And I believe that the Republican Party is the party of children, is the party of moms, is the party of parents. We are the party of families. And so this piece of legislation we are rolling out, I am really proud to work alongside Senators Rubio and Kramer to put a package together that supports moms on the pregnancy journey. So both the prenatal and the postpartum phase, and also early childhood phase. So making sure that resources are available, that you can go to pregnancy.gov and see all of the resources that are available in your area to help you in that journey, that it makes it easier in our rural communities for mothers to have telehealth visits during their prenatal journey, and to really support that effort, not only then, but into the future, allowing more babies to be born, more mothers to be supportive, and more opportunities for families to grow.
And Senator, that's exactly where the Republican Party should be, and that's where the Congress should be, supporting the unborn and their mothers, both, and the families that they live in. Senator Katie Britt, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and appreciate your leadership on Capitol Hill.
Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate being on.